Good morning. We're at Back to the 50s, St. Paul, Minnesota, June 2011. This is the nation's largest car show, put on by the Minnesota Street Rod Association. And this morning I'm sitting with Faith Granger, the magnificent producer, director, creator of the movie Deuce of Spades. Faith, you've been in town now for a couple of weeks, I understand. You've had a chance to see Minnesota. You've had a chance to experience the car scene in Minnesota. What have you been doing besides Back to the 50s?
Well, you know, I got to tell you, I'm tempted to move to Minnesota, actually. It's been really a lot of fun. You guys have a very lively, active, involving kind of a scene for the hot rodders, which we actually are missing in California, believe it or not. We have the weather, we have all the cars, but I think people are so self-consumed in Southern California. No one has time to cruise. We have very few car meets in LA. I only go to the Bob's Big Boy on Friday, and there is one on Sunday morning, which is mostly exotic cars. Here in Minnesota, I have been just going to car cruises almost every day, and it's fun, and there's lots of very good-looking hot rods and nice folks, very friendly. So I really am actually going to very much miss this wonderful hot rod scene you have here when I go back to California.
Well, Back to the 50s has got to be quite a change from some of the smaller shows you've been to. The nation's largest car show. Have you had a chance to cruise the grounds and take a look at some of the events and the other vendors and so on?
Well, I wish I could say that I have, but actually I've seen only part of it, regrettably, because I am here to meet the fans and promote the film, and so I have been a little bit chained to my exhibit. It's been very busy. We have people in line all day wanting to have autographs, and I like to give as much of myself as I can to the fans. But I did cruise a little bit the first day, coming to my booth, and I was very impressed. Yesterday when I was leaving, even though it was supposedly the end of the show, there were still cars everywhere, people cruising around, and it had that nice festive feel of just a bunch of people that love hot rods hanging together, and it's a nice family atmosphere.
The MSRA does a great job with all of their volunteers, considering that all of the workers, except for the police officers and a few of the state fire employees, are all volunteers, and they're very dedicated to what they do. Now, to talk about your film just a little bit, several people have asked me, is this a remake of an older film, or is this something that you created on your own?
Well, I know it's hard for people to believe, due to the fact that they waited for 50 years to see a new hot rod film. It's hard for them to believe that in this day and age, someone would actually come with the idea of making a hot rod film. All the hot rod films were made in the 50s, they were mostly B movies, and then you had a couple of isolated incidents. You had American Graffiti, you had World Fastest Indian, which was mostly a motorcycle movie. But really, since
Excellent
the
movie.
50s, there
Excellent
was...
movie, though.
Oh yeah, I loved it. I loved it. It's a very, it has a lot of depth. And that's what I really liked about the film. But it is not a hot rod film, nonetheless. So as far as hot rods go, truthfully, since the 50s, there hasn't really been anything significantly hot rod oriented filmed. American Graffiti I love, I've studied, I've watched it many times, but it's mostly a movie about cruising and coming of age. It was responsible for reviving hot rodding in the 70s when it came out, and it seems that now again our hobby is needing a little shot in the arm, you know. So making this movie, Deuce of Spades, which is probably the most complete depiction of hot rod activities from back to the 50s. I believe I'm the first one to depict dry lake racing at El Mirage in a motion picture. But anyways, I think that this movie is actually going to give a nice shot in the arm for all of the younger generations, and especially even those who don't know anything about hot rods, that are going to be able to see this film and go, wow, this is so cool. This is not my granddad's car. This is a car that I could have now and be cool in. So we're bringing cool back.
Yesterday I had the opportunity to watch you with a young lady who said that this was a great father-daughter experience watching the movie. So I was quite impressed with the way you treated her. You treated her very, very well, and I was very impressed.
Oh, she
and
was
thank
so
you
cute.
for taking
Yeah,
care of that. Because our spectators that come to Back to the 50s are everything to us. They really do make the show. Now, the movie. You created the movie. You wrote the movie. You directed the movie. You produced the movie. Where do you get the ambition to do that?
It wasn't actually an ambition, it was a necessity. The dream was to bring the jalopies back to the big screen, and it started with my falling in love with the 32 Roadster, in which we're sitting right now, the Deuce of Spades. buying it in 2006, and shortly thereafter going to a large car show. It was the 75th anniversary of the Deuce. So when I was there, I had done a little documentary, homemade, just for fun, on a $200 camera. I've never done anything. That was my first video effort ever. I'm a musician by trade, but not a filmmaker. And when I saw how much I enjoyed making the movie, how beautiful the cars look on the screen, and how much people at the show enjoyed seeing it, I knew that we had to bring the cars back and give them justice, and also depict a slice of Americana that's been ignored by the big studios for much too long, and pay a tribute to the hot rodders, and especially the old-timers. So that was the desire. The desire was to make this film, and it was a great challenge. And basically, whatever it took to get this film completed and produce something of quality, I was going to do. Since I did not have a budget, and I did not want Hollywood to hijack the film, I had people that came in early on when they heard that I had an idea about a film, and they started to hear all of the, the word got out very quickly on the internet, and threads started popping up, and people started talking about it. So these people approached me and say, hey, how about $500,000? Could that help you make the film? And I told them, well, certainly, but what's the price tag? I want to have creative freedom. I want my movie to be period correct. I want it to be correct to the cars. I don't want it disfigured. And I know that if you are going to become partners with my film, you're going to end up controlling it, and I just don't really want to do that. So thank you very much. I appreciate it, but no thank you. So I walked away from $500,000. So to answer your question, when you start with nothing and you walked away from $500,000 and you don't have money to pay people, that means you're going to have to do pretty much everything yourself.
So that adds the next question. How did you find a cast who was willing to work for what you were able to pay them?
Which was zero. Everything was donated pretty much during the first 3 years of making the film. It took 4 years to make the film. The last year was post-production, and at that last stage, the pros stepped in to really take the film to the top level so we could be worthy of a theatrical release. But all the way up and until then, it was all me working with a bunch of people that were excited about this idea, this vision I had, this dream. They saw my passion and they wanted to see it come to fruition. So they basically stepped in and volunteered. People volunteered cars, locations that were period correct, props, and of course the cast. The cast, in Los Angeles, which is where I reside, of course, this is actor city. So we have lots of actors there. A lot of them are very talented. It's very hard for them to break. They want to be able to capture performances on camera, and they are willing to do it a lot of the time for very little or for free. If they think a project is very worthy, they will donate. Now, finding good actors that are willing to donate, that means that you have to have a really good project going. And I was lucky in the fact that I did have a very original project. No 50s period film, no budget are ever made, because it's a big no-no making a period film on a no budget. That's basically, you need a lot of money to get cars, to get props, clothes. Everything has to look like the 50s. It's not an easy task. So those guys were very excited to see a no-budget film that was a 50s piece, and they all wanted in. So I had no problem actually finding actors. But of course, I was very worried that finding a Johnny Calloway, would be an impossible task. And I was very lucky to find Timothy Luke, freshly arrived from Oregon, who was a very, very charismatic young man, extremely good looking. It was perfect for the role, and I snatched it. So.
He absolutely did make the film for his part of the film. That was no question about it. Now, all of the other cars that you found and so on, they're all local California cars?
Yes, pretty much all of them were local from my area, direct vicinity. There were some that were shipped from Fresno, ironically. For the drag strip scene, we had some cars that actually were trailered down. But primarily I drew from the local community, because having a hot rod myself, being very active at car meets, car cruises, I had met a lot of people and laid the groundwork in the first year of working on the idea of this film. I started asking everyone that I saw that had a car that I liked, that I thought was period correct, that I would want in my film. I told them, hey, I'm going to make a movie. Would you like to be in it? And we exchanged, contact information. Out of these hundreds of people, there was only maybe about 40 that were hardcore that said, yes, we'll come at 6 a.m. to the set and sit there all day, or be there all night for some of the night scenes that needed cars. It was tough, and people didn't really see the vision, some of them. And a lot of people regret today that, they didn't help. And now they're like, oh my God, we didn't know this was going to be such a good movie and such a cult film.
That leads us to ask the next question. Is there any possibility that you're ever going to release this film other than through Faith Granger Productions?
That would mean selling the rights to the film to a big studio. And although that is tempting, because that would mean probably a big lump of money for me, for cash, and if I was in this for the money, I would sell it and then get all the money and then do something else. But I'm not in this for the money. It is nice to have financial reward so you can think about making another film, but at the same time, this was never the goal or the motivation. I am very hesitant of doing that, because that means that our movie, which I made for the hot rod community, will be in the hands of Hollywood, and that they will decide where it goes or if it goes or not. They could decide to put it in a drawer and not do anything with it. They could decide, well, we don't want to do car shows. And you guys will never be able to see me here signing my DVDs and talking to my fans. Because of that, I'm really hesitant about giving this film away. This is a film that's selling wonderfully, that's already attained cult status on its own, and I'm a free spirit, so I think this is a hot rod spirit.
Well, that's wonderful, Faith. Thank you for coming to Back to the 50s. We've really enjoyed having you here, and I hope if you haven't got to see a copy of the pictures, the movie itself, you really should pick up a copy, because I have thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a love story that just happens to have some cars in it.
Lots of cars. Thank you for having me here. Bye-bye.